Welcome to the RPG Podcast.
And we are live.
Oh God, Patton!
Presented by SHEATH. A Time Wheel production.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Robert Patton Global Podcast. It's that time again, and I'm here with a podcaster who I was just on his podcast, the Brooklyn Boxing Podcast, a couple weeks ago, and now he's coming over for a swapcast. His name is Patrick Healy, and I'm very happy to have you here, sir. How you doing?
Good. Yeah, excited to be on your podcast. We had a great conversation on mine, so I'm looking forward to continuing it here.
Yeah, I think we're both feeling a little bit better as well, because there was something in the air a few weeks ago, maybe. And I was feeling like just, I go through ups and downs or whatever in my energies. It's usually up, and then I have like a period or something every so often, and I just have to take a few days and for downtime. Do you ever do that?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes also with just interviews, what I have to work on too, like when I'm interviewing fighters or personalities or someone like yourself, it's like, how do I draw the stories out of them? Sometimes certain guests, and I'm not talking about our podcast at all, but I did an interview with a fighter recently, and he was like a really low key, mellow guy, and which is great, but you want that energy to show. So I'm thinking in the back of my head while I'm talking to him, man, what can I say here to get some energy going? So it's always a challenge, especially over Zoom too. In person is always a different vibe.
Yeah, I'm liking the headphones in person and really locking in to the other person's eyes and, just nothing but them and the conversation flowing. It's like total concentration, and I'm just able to pay attention to what they're saying and process it better and have a more genuine conversation, I guess, ultimately. But these are pretty close. I'm trying to lock it in. You've been doing podcasts for a while. You've done over 40, maybe more podcasts.
Yeah.
And
yeah, actually done. So to give it a quick kind of background on Brooklyn Boxing Podcast was really something I started out of my backpack. So when I was I'm actually sitting in Miami right now, but pre-COVID, I was in Brooklyn, New York, and always a big fight fan, boxing fan, MMA as well. But I love to train, and I was in and out of gyms in Brooklyn, meeting a lot of guys, building some relationships with fighters and trainers and that sort of thing. And I was like, man, these guys have such amazing stories, really motivating, a lot of them. And I was like, why don't I just start a podcast, start talking to these guys? So I got a couple mics, had my laptop in my backpack, and show up to the gym or wherever, and kind of sit down and do episodes that way. And I was doing that for a little while, and then I actually partnered with a sort of friend of mine who's kind of helped take it to the next level. And I was just doing it all on YouTube by myself and editing and stuff. So my partners helped kind of spread across multiple platforms now, and up the an upgrade in terms of the quality of the episodes, and so that's the new 42 episodes now with that kind of new format, which
nice.
Yeah.
Right on. Have you I'm really interested in this because I want to get better, and I want to know what type of training or something you've done when it comes to podcasting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm mostly just self-taught, honestly. In college I was a film and television major, actually.
Wow.
But I'll be the first to say that I wouldn't say I was a great student by any means. I was interested in partying probably a little bit more than stuff. And but I definitely brought that interest with me outside of college. I don't work in film and television currently, but I have this podcast, and it's something I'm passionate about, and it just kind of aligned for me. I was like, man, I'm a big fight fan, like I mentioned,
Hmm.
I wanted to get the stories out there. Like my second ever guest is this guy Fernando Villegas, who was one of like the lead producers for HBO's 24/7, which was like when HBO was in boxing, they would make these amazing backstories on these fighters before premier matchups.
Yeah.
And that sort of storytelling was like what I fell in love with, and also helped like me fall in love with boxing as well, because it just romanticized everything. um and you really got to like feel the story, and it became a movie almost, like the lead up to a lot of these fights. So their influence, the HBO 24/7 series on the fight game, is like immense, and now everyone does it.
Wow. That just made me think of kind of like you said, it's a movie for the lead up to the final scene or whatever, and the victory, and yelling Adrian. But because I'm trying to figure out like an interview style, and I know this is weird conversation, but it's like, but I like what you said about the movie, because if you think of their life like a movie, you could ask certain questions about what would be scenes of their life or a movie and how it played out to get them where they are,
Yeah,
like a
definitely.
story. I guess anything like a story, like a book. I watched this YouTube video about getting people to tell their story, and I don't know if I told you this. It was a guy who he was started interviewing people late in their lives, and he knew that they had a story to tell. They had lived their life already. It was, the story has been told, and everybody probably wants to tell their story, but it's how do you get that out of them, and what chord do you strike to unleash the waterfall of whatever emotions and story that there is. And the one example that stood out to me the most was this woman who was a choreographer in New York and Broadway, and she made all the like red carpets, and but she was always kind of like behind the scenes because she was a choreographer. And when he got her on stage with him, he said, "Did it ever bother you that you were not beautiful?" And because if she had been beautiful, she would have been like in the forefront and blah blah blah, because she was a great dancer and very talented. But because she wasn't, she was in the back. And she said it did, but it was like a bold question, you know.
Yeah.
And but
Yeah.
it got the story out, But like, what do you say to a fighter? Like, what do you say? How do you get it going? What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, that like line of bold questioning is definitely like a tricky thing to navigate, especially with fighters, because I find, and a lot of people I feel like say this in the fight game, is like a lot of these guys are like deeply emotional because it's such a lonely sport. There's so much pressure on them. Like, you don't have a team, like a lot, they have a team behind them, but you don't have a team in the ring. So there's like so
Yeah.
much weight that these guys carry. So you never, like, for me, like I never want to obviously like disrespect one of these fighters or make them feel that I'm like slighting them in questioning. But at the same time, like I find it is good to try to challenge these guys at times, like if they're having some downsides in their career, if they're not getting a lot of knockouts or not getting a lot of attention. It's like asking them about, what are you going to do to make people give a fuck, like, because that's the thing, like you need these guys to make money. And we see that more than ever now in boxing with Jake Paul and Logan Paul, and you need to capture people's attention, and you need to pull people in. And unfortunately, the majority of the public doesn't really care about your actual skills. There's the boxing fans and the fight fans who are in love with the real skill set, but the majority of people, they just want to be entertained. So these fighters, like, that's a big thing now moving forward for these guys, needing to create a character and make people care about them getting in the ring.
It's got to be like this right here. Ha! The Ultimate Warrior. I'm here to
Yeah.
take you out.
Yeah.
You know, this guy, I'm holding an Ultimate Warrior doll, but the WWF and WWE were the ultimate storytellers. People want a story, like you were just saying, about the boxers. That's what got you in. I never saw that in boxing, and so I never really terribly got into it until Jake Paul and Logan Paul, LOL. Except for Tyson, of course, and Roy Jones Jr. for sure. I loved watching them.
I mean, like, so that HBO 24/7 episode that I like was referencing, it was the one Fernando, and I had him on the podcast. He said the one that really got them going was Oscar De La Hoya versus Mayorga. And De La Hoya, of course, at that time, he had a big following. He was a golden boy. He was fighting Mayorga, who was a guy who everyone expected Oscar to beat. However, through their storytelling, people really felt Mayorga had a chance to win. And Mayorga is a guy who would smoke cigarettes at the weigh-in. He was from, I believe, Nicaragua, and had like super gang past and like scars from machete fights. Like, this dude was a badass, and played up that character to the fullest with the cigarettes at the weigh-in, and blowing smoke in people's faces, just doing anything to piss people off. So it was like getting to see that backstory of his life. People are like, damn, this guy is a real savage and comes from like the toughest of tough places. Maybe he can beat the pretty boy and Oscar De La Hoya. And that really did massive things for the promotion of the fight and the buys at the end of the day. So it's all about telling the story. It's all about creating hype with substance, though. I think that's what HBO did so well when they were in the boxing game. They had such great substance to their storytelling that is lacking a little bit now. It's a little bit more circus and just kind of cheap thrills. I would
Showtime, really?
I think Showtime does a good job.
Yeah.
A Triller.
Ugh.
It was horrible.
Oh my God. I was watching with my wife and we were just like, what the fuck are they doing? Turn this off. So annoying.
I mean, it was honestly like, I was struggling to get through it. I mean, it was like the announcing was disgraceful. I thought, like, the sideshows in between the fights. I'm like, I mean,
what is this?
What is this? And like, where's the respect for the actual sport? I mean, it's crazy.
Oh my God, it's so funny. They made it so bad that now when you watch it, it's like, oh, it's good because you don't have to watch all that shit.
Yeah. So I mean, it's interesting. It's a crazy landscape right now.
It's a what landscape? Crazy?
Like landscape in boxing right now, because like they're really trying to figure out just how to pull new fans in.
Yeah.
In a way, like Triller's kind of spurred like the Zone and Showtime, ESPN a little bit to like try to pull in new broadcasters or figure out ways to hype it up. So maybe that's the silver lining. Let's hope.
I was just going through my credit card bill and I noticed a DAZN charge and I'm like, I haven't watched this since like 6 months ago. I was so pissed. So if you guys watched that fight, you got probably put on some kind of auto pay or whatever, so check your bill. That's annoying. But I found that these guys the Paul brothers are bringing attention to the sport. I know Rogan has always been spoken highly of it. Brendan Schaub is a huge proponent, and they're like UFC fighters, and I like seeing that there's not that us against them attitude so much anymore. And it is a little bit with the competing between the sports, but at least they're taking that on, and I find it fascinating personally.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fascinated with like what the UFC's been able to accomplish. Like, I'm a big fan of MMA, but like Dana White, he gets hit a lot recently about like fighter pay, and like that's hard to argue against. Like, that's something that should improve. But the like landscape that he's created in the UFC is incredible because there's one belt per division. It's looked at as like the NFL, basically. Like the UFC brand is bigger than almost all of the fighters. So people like come back to the UFC, and he puts on fights like every week. The cards are like always stacked. It's just continuously growing. And like that's what's such a mess in boxing is like you have multiple networks, multiple promoters, 4 belts per division. And that's not even counting the WBA, who's like has the super champion, regular champion, and then like interim. It's insane. So my point is like in the UFC, you know who the champion is at a certain weight class. In boxing, there's like 4 guys, or maybe some one dude unifies the division, which like recently happened at 140 pounds with Josh Taylor. So you're like, okay, that's the guy. But in a lot of the weight classes, you have 2 to 3, 4 champions, which is like for fans to follow that. How are they gonna know who the best is? You know?
Yeah, I mean, at least with, like you said, with the UFC, you know, there's Bellator, there's ONE FC, there's PFL, but UFC is the pinnacle. And then, but with these other boxing organizations, you don't know which one is. They're all probably saying they're the best one.
Yeah, exactly. They're all like competing against each other, and then the promoters who have ties to networks, like so Eddie Hearn, and who is Matchroom Boxing, has a deal with DAZN, so all of his fighters fight on DAZN. Then you got Al Heyman with PBC and Fox or Showtime. They try to keep all of their fighters in-house, so they have a champion on their network. The odds of them getting that guy to fight outside of their network is very low, because if he loses, then they lose their guy and their network. So it's just like such a mess. Hopefully Dana White's mentioned maybe getting into boxing at some point, maybe. But I mean,
well, I see, you know, you see him meeting up with Mayweather, and I was going to ask you, like, and it sounds like you kind of answered that question though, but like, what about boxing bothers you, you know?
yeah. I mean, right now, outside of like the Triller stuff going on, which is kind of whatever, I'm over it. That is the biggest thing right now that bothers me, is how unclear it is as to who's the best in each division. And the biggest fights not happening due to promotional greed. Like Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford should have already fought. You know, even in the heavyweight division right now, we have Wilder and Fury scheduled for October, but they went through hell to negotiate that. It took way too long. That fight should have already happened. And then you got Anthony Joshua sitting on the sidelines right now. He's going to fight Alexander Usyk, who's like a great, formidable opponent, like undefeated. But the point is, it's like if this was the UFC, if you want to look at the heavyweights right now, you probably have Tyson Fury, the heavyweight champion. Then you got maybe Joshua, number 1 ranked contender, and Wilder right there. And then like the excitement around those top guys they have to fight each other.
To capitalize.
They have no choice.
Yeah.
They have no choice but to fight each other. Like that's what creates lasting moments for fans, and like those iconic moments. And, you know, we saw like in the old school boxing, like 80s, 70s, 90s, like guys were more likely to fight each other for whatever reason, and just less networks, less greedy promoters. But that's the biggest thing that bothers me right now, is like it's just if we lose out on some like marquee matchups due to money.
Oh man, yeah. And Joshua, I've been hearing his name. I don't even know what he looks like, but I've heard his name for like 5 years, and he's yet to fight Fury or Wilder, and everyone wants to see him fight these guys.
Yeah, I mean, he is. If you've never seen him, you should probably get him in your underwear soon, because he looks like carved out of stone. I mean, he is like, you want to create a player in a video game, like heavyweight, that's what he looks like. He's
Wow.
260, shredded, good looking dude. Like, I mean, he's the full pack, and he's really good too. Like, it's not like he's just all show either. I mean, like
he lost to that fat
yeah,
guy,
Andy Ruiz.
but then he got it back, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was like a crazy moment, obviously in boxing like history for Andy Ruiz to pull off the upset. MSG, Madison Square Garden, like on 2 weeks' notice too. Like he filled in late for that because Joshua's original opponent failed drug tests.
Wow.
So they had to fill that slot, and Eddie Hearn, who was the promoter, Anthony Joshua's his guy. He was like in tears after that.
That's like when the apes take AMC and the hedge fund guys are holding the bag crying when your guy loses. It's like, that was my money.
Yeah.
But he got it back.
Yeah, he got it back. And, Andy Ruiz is still very much in the mix as well. And, Joshua, the guy Joshua's fighting next his name's Alexander Usyk. He's a Ukrainian cruiserweight champion. So 200 pounds. He was fighting at 200 pounds. He's undefeated, moving up to heavyweight now. So shades of like Evander Holyfield. Evander Holyfield's a guy who came up from cruiserweight to heavyweight. And obviously that's a success. So Usyk is going to be definitely the smaller fighter in the ring against Joshua, but extremely skilled. A lot of people think that he could be a nice sleeper pick if you're a betting man to potentially outbox Joshua. I don't see it happening, but it's a good fight. So there's basically a final four right now in the heavyweight division: Joshua, Usyk on one side of the bracket, and Wilder and Fury on the other.
Fury's running around town with COVID, coughing on people or something, I heard.
Spending too much time in Miami.
He's like, pop, pop, pop. Oh, was that where he was in Miami? No.
Yeah, he was in Miami for a while, and I don't know, who knows about that.
Oh, you're in Miami though.
Yeah. I'm sitting in Miami right now.
Did you see him or just?
I didn't get a chance to see him. No, he was like on yachts and stuff a lot. So I get the invite.
Yeah, you're not in the club just yet, but you're like in the scene. I heard, you're at a pretty big gym. You're around a lot of people that are professional fighters and agents of fighters. Yeah,
shout out to Fifth Street Gym here in Miami, the home of Muhammad Ali and Angelo Dundee, famous trainer. The guys who run the gym now, Dino Spencer and Tom Sadas, two great guys, and they have a crazy atmosphere in the gym. Like, it has such history, of course. And then today you have heavyweight boxers in there down to the smallest weight class you could imagine. You got MMA guys in there, bare knuckle champions. And then the Fifth Street Gym podcast, which I help out on and actually have co-hosted a few episodes. The last episode we did was with Hector Lombard.
Oh, I've heard of him.
Bare knuckle champ. And Cuban guy, was in the UFC for I don't even know how long, very long. The Olympics also for judo. He's a savage. I mean, he is built like a fire hydrant, and his fists are like the size of plates. I'm like, I can't believe this guy fights bare knuckle.
Is it heavyweight or?
No, I think he's fighting in the UFC. He was 185.
Okay.
But bare knuckle, I believe it's in that range as well.
Because I just interviewed Jason the Kid Knight, who was also fighting in bare knuckle FC.
I remember watching his fight against Artem Lobov.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, tell me about it.
Oh my God. I mean, that was like that was pretty early, like bare knuckle FC days, because like it hasn't been around for a while. Like the bare knuckle, like with David Feldman, I think is the like Dana White of the BKFC.
Okay.
Like, that fight, I want to say is like probably one of the first bare knuckle fights I watched, and that was just, and the reason why I kind of tuned in was like Artem Lobov is Conor McGregor's like longtime training partner. So I was like interested in just seeing him fight, and that was like one of the bloodiest, goriest events like I've ever seen. I was like, I don't know if I can keep going with these events because Jason Knight, I mean, these guys are like absolute savages. I can't fathom what it takes to put your body through like what they do. Like he looked like Chucky. Like his face was
Oh my God.
so cut up. Both of them. But I think he ended up winning the rematch against Artem as well. So I mean, just shows like, I don't know, these guys. I'm sure talking to Jason, right? I mean, I'm sure he was like a savage.
Yeah, he was really cool. He I wasn't sure. I did a little bit of research, and he's very country, and I wasn't sure how he was going to be, but he was just down to earth. We talked about his story, his childhood. He was kind of a bad kid. He got into some trouble, and I wasn't, but he was, he started at 14, had won 8 in a row by 16, 8 fights in a row, and he just seems to be really well. He has a great understanding of MMA, and what had happened was he was doing so good, he got caught up in the limelight. He started telling stories about having 80 grand in his pocket and taking all his friends out and doing that same old sad story about partying too much. But he's only 29. But he lost. He lost a couple fights, got kicked out. Has since he's like making his way back, and I think that's where he was fighting in ONE FC, right? After he got out of the UFC.
That would make sense. Yeah, the ONE FC is like, that's another crazy organization. That
not ONE FC. I'm sorry, the fighters thing, the fighting, the bare knuckle FC. Sorry.
Yeah,
BKFC. I don't think he's doing ONE FC, although he did just get pulled up to PFL, so he's going to be making his debut there, which that's cool. I did freak out for a second because I started noticing that I normally hit record, and my producer is recording it on his end, and I'm like, why isn't that recording? And it totally, I was like, oh my God. Either way, we need to probably do that. I don't know. I'd feel more comfortable doing that going forward, but I know he's recording it on his computer right now. But it threw me off there for a second, and we can cut that part out. But Jason Knight, that's cool, and I like being able to get these guys' stories. And he did tell me his story, and I have hopes for him to make it back to the UFC, or maybe just be a champion in PFL. PFL's not, they're talented. All these other organizations are stepping up their game, like Michael Chandler. Yeah, champion went over.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. Like, it's pretty. What's kind of like I'm a little worried about is now that these other organizations are becoming more legit and they have guys who like definitely can compete in the UFC and maybe challenge for titles, like we could be headed into the boxing realm.
Oh,
it's not there yet because the UFC is still clearly like the top dog. But with Bellator on the rise and like ONE FC and PFL, like most recently this past weekend, AJ McKee beat Pitbull.
Yep.
Yeah, I can't remember his first, Patricio. He beat him for the 145 belt in Bellator, and AJ McKee's undefeated. And like a lot of people on Twitter and online were like talking like, hey, like, I think AJ could maybe chat. Like, he looks really good. Like, I think he could maybe fight for the belt in the UFC. And then the Bellator commissioner was saying like, hey, I'm up for it. Like, if they want to put it on the line, like UFC versus Bellator, like, let's do it. I mean, that Dana, there's like a no win for him to do that right now. But like, that would be the start of the boxing kind of thing, because then you'd have like multiple belts that are looked at as legit.
Right.
And like, I kind of hope that doesn't happen.
I
And I don't
know.
know anytime soon because the UFC has such like a leg up on everyone right now. But these other organizations, like, they are not just like, they're not purely B-level organizations anymore. They have guys who are UFC ready.
Do you know what weight class he's in?
145 pounds.
Oh, okay.
Featherweight.
Oh, wow. So he would take Volkanovski or Holloway.
Yeah.
Or
People were like asking about that online, being like, who do you think would win? And
wow.
some people like think that AJ McKee like might have a shot, and who's to say he wouldn't? I mean, Michael Chandler was like very close to knocking out Oliveira for the 155 belt. Like, he had him so hurt in the first round. Like,
I thought they could have stopped it, and they would have
too. Yeah.
Yeah, like they've stopped it for less, but I feel like sometimes they tell them to keep going and sometimes they say don't stop it under any circumstances.
Refereeing in MMA is like such a nightmare. Like, I don't know how Herb Dean and like those guys do it, because imagine, like, I always try to just imagine myself being in the ring for those big fights, like reffing, and like the crowd atmosphere and the energy has got to be crazy, right? Like, it's super intense, like adrenaline going, and everything's happening so fast. So like when a guy gets like kicked in the head and he's clearly like hurt bad on the ground, the dude jumps on and starts punching him a couple times. Like,
Yeah.
you got to be experienced to like evaluate in the moment and not just like freak out and be like, stop. Because these guys sometimes like they bounce back up, like as we saw in that fight with Oliveira.
Yep. Yeah. I felt bad for Chandler, but I like Oliveira. I like a lot of these fighters. So it's like somebody's got to lose, and it is what. So you do pay attention to the UFC pretty good then, because you know about Tyron Woodley. Are you familiar with him? Oh no.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, for sure. Sorry, I just kind of like froze up for a second, but I think we're good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. That okay. This is a new way of doing this for us, and it's just like a little bit weird for me too. Because you're a little bit frozen, but
all right. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Are we good, Dave?
Yep, you're all good. He froze for a second, but it's all good.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Very well.
Yeah, Tyron Woodley obviously had like a great UFC career and then kind of went on a little bit of a slide towards the end. But he was only his losses were really only like they were against top 5 guys, so it's not like he was losing to guys who weren't ranked or anything like that. So it'll be interesting to see like how much dog he has left in him, really. And like I gotta lean his direction. I had to pick between him and Jake Paul, but it's I wouldn't be shocked if Jake Paul won, honestly, either.
I wouldn't either, because Tyron might just pull a Ben Askren or whatever and just get that paycheck and ride off into the sunset. I don't see that happening, but I could see him trying and still losing, But if he just gives it his all, he has that punching power. If he just comes at Jake with ferociousness, veracity, or whatever, veracity, like Tyson might say, just kill or be killed attitude. He's always been, he's like timid sometimes. He holds back, and it's annoying. It's like, I know you can do it. Look at you. Look, I've seen you do it before. You knocked out Robbie Lawler and a lot of other people, the Wonder Boy, but even other people that are really good. But then he starts just holding back. It was so weird. He's like in his head, and that's a thing, that happens. Have you boxed?
Yeah. Have I?
Yeah.
Sorry, I think it's a little rainy outside. Maybe the connection dropped for a second, but yeah, I have not competed like in amateur bouts or anything like that. But I do spar from time to time, and I do like to get in there and mix it up a little bit. Nothing too serious or like heavy sparring, like nothing too heavy, just because for me at this point, like I don't, I don't have aspirations of like becoming a pro or anything like that. Like
Oh, of
the
course.
time definitely passed me on that, but like I love the sport, and I feel like it gives me a little bit of like an angle of like just understanding what I'm watching more too when I actually like get in there and train with some guys. So yeah, I do like doing that, and it is kind of in my mind a little bit about maybe doing like couple amateur bouts at some point. Um, but like I'd want to do it right and really train for it, obviously. And that's something maybe I'm interested in possibly doing that at some point.
That would be exciting. I would love to do that as well. I just bought a mouthpiece, and I have a guy that comes and trains with me, and we were just doing the lightest sparring you could ever possibly do like this past weekend, and it was fun. It's just good exercise.
Yeah.
I'm like, he didn't hit me in the head, just body shots and whatnot. It was fun. He's coming back. He's a professional. He's going to be fighting in Fury FC or something in Houston on September 7th or 12th or something. Dylan the King.
Nice.
Dylan King. Good dude. It's cool to be around these guys. Like you said, they have this mentality that's unique and inspirational, So, you said something earlier about creating hype. It's all about creating hype. How do we create hype for these guys, for your podcast? Like what do you, you see Colby Covington, Conor McGregor, these characters that are being built, but what do you think is the answer?
I don't think there's much that like you can do on the outside. It's really got to be like an internal thing for these fighters. Because like they really have to be conscious of like the character they create. Like even like it can just be them, right? Like it can be how they are, and that obviously works great.
Yeah.
But like a lot of these fighters, from what I've seen, like are kind of like normal guys, like not everyone has like a crazy personality or is super outspoken and like wants to stir the pot. But that doesn't work for selling fights. Like they're in the entertainment business, like you got to create a character sometimes. So like Colby Covington is honestly like the perfect example of that, because he fought Damian Maia in Brazil. I don't remember exactly the year, but a couple of years ago. And he even like has revealed this, like that was the last fight on his contract. And he didn't have that whole persona yet of being like the super like I'm Trump's favorite fighter, like fuck everyone. Like he didn't have that persona yet, but he knew in his mind, like, this is my last fight on the contract. Like, the UFC keeps offering me the same amount of money. Like, this isn't working. I need to come up with something. And that's the night he did when he beat Damian Maia, and he grabbed the mic and was like, Brazil. It was in Brazil. He was like, Brazil, you suck. Like, and Daniel Cormier has like been interviewed about that moment too, because you see him like getting kind of giddy because he's like, oh my god, like the crowd is like kill him right now. So he kept giving him the mic and like egging him on, because he knew like that was a moment that Colby was really like.
I want to go back and watch that. That sounds awesome.
Like, it's a cool moment because you get to see basically the shift in Colby's career of him embracing the villain like full time. He's like, all right, I just want people just got to hate me then. Like if this is nice guy thing isn't working out. and like, he's doing it to the fullest now.
Yeah, he's fighting Usman soon. What do you feel is going to happen there? Same thing.
It's so hard to pick against Usman. Like, he just looks good right now. But if anyone's gonna do it, I really think Colby's the guy to beat him. Like, their first fight was very close, and
so
Colby
close.
was up on the scorecards before they stopped it. And
I was there. I was at that fight. Yeah, and like when he got not like put down or whatever, my wife, I think she was like, yes, and I was like, fuck. I was so pissed. I mean, like, it ruined we like kind of fought that night because I was so mad that she was happy that he lost, and like, I wanted him to win, and I know he's an ass or whatever you want to say, but I found him hugely entertaining. I love that, even the heel. I like Chael Sonnen and these guys that just, and Conor McGregor, that talk shit and get hype around fights. And so I agree with your assessment. How, it's hard to pick against Usman. If anybody's going to do it, it's going to be Colby. It would probably be on points. He doesn't typically finish people, but
how was the energy in that building? It must have been insane.
It was electric. It was super exciting because there were like 3 title fights that night, I think. But I was bored. I don't really dig, no offense, Amanda Nunes. She doesn't do it for me. She's the greatest of all time.
She whoops ass.
yeah, she just does it. But I don't like a beatdown. I like a close fight like Usman and Colby. And who was that? Alexander Gustafsson versus John Jones. And just there's 1,000 fights where like Chael Sonnen versus Bisping, these fights that were just like epic. Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Zhang Wei Li. Remember that?
That was insane.
Yeah. So many. I want a good fight though, and she never, it's like nobody really even challenges her. It's
it's really hard to find, but there is. So the fight that they have to make, and I don't know why they're not doing it, is Valentina Shevchenko has to fight Amanda Nunes. They've already fought twice, both decisions, but like Valentina, like those were kind of controversial decisions, one of them, and
agreed.
Like Valentina is fucking badass. Like, I want to see her win that.
She's fun to watch. She's so dynamic and like an actual like legit real martial artist. I feel like Nunes is just like a brute beat down, just like almost like an animal, a gorilla or whatever. Just she doesn't. It's not like the technique. She's great.
She has crazy power.
Yeah, and it's not.
Is like
artistic.
It's really good, but like her power is like what sets her apart. I mean, she just melts girls.
Yeah, they just crumble before her. And so I'm rooting for Pena. I actually did not like her for the longest time. I don't know why, Juliana Pena. But now that she started talking shit, she called her fat. She's like, you don't want to come down to 135. You eat too much or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's all entertainment at the end of the day, and the UFC is crushing it. Like, I've been to a couple events as well, and nothing like that. But I will say, one of the events I went to, which was unreal, I was at MSG. That was when Daniel Cormier fought Derek Lewis.
Wow.
And Israel Adesanya was like he wasn't even the co-main, I don't think.
Whoa.
And that was like on come up. So that was really cool to see those guys. But like comparing boxing events to UFC, in my experience, like the whole production of it and the energy in the UFC events is like next level. Granted, I haven't been to like I'm sure Wilder versus Fury, like heavyweight, like big time boxing title. I would obviously like love to go to one of those events. I'm sure that energy is gotta be crazy too, but UFC cards are just like I don't know, like even watching them, it's just like damn, like every fight.
I'll tell you one. Another one I went to, it was Cowboy versus Connor. and I was hanging out with this guy Robert Oberst all day, and we were eating dinner before the fight, and as we were walking into the stadium, he handed me like 5 little mushroom pills, but we had to go separate ways. So he was sitting. Joe Rogan had given him tickets and I bought my own ticket. I was sitting with like the Cowboy fans because we were sponsoring Cowboy at the time, and we still work with him. But that was so electric. I mean, it was, and everyone was, thought maybe Cowboy would win. There was some hope he would win, and I certainly thought he had a chance, and he obviously had a chance, but it didn't happen. But it was like Conor was like a lion. Like when I saw him, maybe it was the mushrooms or whatever, but he just looked like fire was coming off of his body, and he was just, there's something mystical about him, even though he's losing or whatever. He has it within him.
So I'm such like a McGregor Homer fan, honestly, and like, but when a lot of people when you say that, like, they don't really like, either they didn't watch him pre Mayweather, or they like didn't understand like what he did. Like his rise was so crazy. Like he absolutely dusted everyone at one. People are like, oh, he didn't defend his belt. There wasn't anyone to defend it against at 145. He killed everyone at 145. Yeah. Kicked them all out in a row. So it was like, who else is there to fight? Then he did the Diaz thing, then 155. And like what you were talking about, that like magic and that aura around him, and like, now that is something you can't create. Like that is some like once in a generational type. You know what I mean? Like
seems like it.
McGregor has it. Like,
Rousey,
Rousey had it at one point. I mean, like that is like some mystical shit that he has going on, and it's kind of sad to see it like fading right now. I hope that this isn't. I hope we're not watching like the end of McGregor, but like I don't personally think it's the end, but because I'm a fan of his, but it's hard not to like realize that pre Mayweather and post Mayweather is it's two different guys.
Oh yeah. Something has changed significantly, and I remember watching videos of him where he would be reading passages from this book, The Secret, about the law of attraction and visualizing it and manifesting it, and he was doing it as he's saying it. And I practiced those beliefs in my business and life, trying to get to where we're going, and we just made the Inc. 5000, whatever that means. I just got an email, and I was like, that's pretty cool. I was like dancing a little bit earlier, and we're visualizing it. So he visualized it. He's there, but then maybe he didn't think, what do you do when you get there? Or because now you have all the money, it's hard. That whole saying, I don't even want to say, it's hard to get up and run at 5 a.m. when you're sleeping in silk sheets. And
yeah, that is a big part of it. But I will say, like, another huge factor is just the inactivity. And like when he went to fight Mayweather, and like, obviously I don't blame him for doing that. Like he got, like, he won. He already won. Like McGregor has done everything he set out to do. Like, he's made more money than he ever could imagine. He had won 2 belts. Like, he won. He beat the game by age 30. Like, he beat the game. But in terms of just fighting, he goes and does the Mayweather thing. Then when he comes back and fights Khabib, like, he was 2 years outside the octagon.
Wow.
Like, that's so long to be out of mixed martial arts and have a boxing focus and then come back. Still did pretty well, honestly, in that fight compared to a lot of Khabib's opponents. And then after that, then there's another huge layoff, like a year, well over a year, maybe even another 2 years, Cowboy. And then Corona hits right after that. So then it's like another year plus. and like then he fights Dustin. He's thinking about Manny Pacquiao, like whatever. There's all excuses and stuff like that, but the inactivity for me is like the biggest thing. And now his leg's broken, even more time
Oh
outside.
my God.
It's
Yeah.
like, in a way, like his prime years have been somewhat wasted, which is crazy to say because he was still 2 division champ and everything. But like he was on such a roll at that point where if he stayed, like who knows what he could have done. But now, like after he got the Mayweather thing, it took him out of MMA. He's been so inactive, and to like get back into that rhythm is almost impossible because like on his rise, he was fighting 3 or 4 times a year. Um, Canelo in boxing, if you look at him, like he's an example of a guy who's at the top of the sport, top of the game, and he's staying super active, which is awesome for the fans because you get to see him. But he's literally fighting like 4 times a year. And that's not by accident. Like it's not even a money thing. Like that's for him. He's like, I'm staying sharp as fuck. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
he doesn't have time to like get out of the gym. Like that's just what he does.
Well, I think that that's what you were saying about Connor's changing his lifestyle over after he won the 2 belts and won against Mayweather. He probably moved to a new house, a new part of the city. His whole routine changed. What he was doing when he became champion changed when he became champion. And now whatever he's doing now isn't working like that was. And I mean, whatever he did with Cowboy seemed to work, or Cowboy just folded or whatever. That was a really odd scenario.
He seemed like he was in like a good mental
place,
like, into that fight too, like which has been really interesting to like watch his career.
Yeah.
So there's clearly like different mental sides of him that he like falls into. Like this last fight, he seemed like not okay. He seemed like almost like how he was for the Khabib fight. Like he was just mentally like not present.
Yeah.
Khabib actually had like an interview recently where he talked about Connor, and it was really interesting, like what he said. And he was like, I always tell my fighters that I coach now, like, you can't start training when the UFC calls you for a fight. Like, you can't just be like, okay, now I have 8 weeks to a fight. It's like,
right.
No, that's good time to get in shape, but like, you have to be training all the time. And like, that's clearly what like with McGregor's career, like I'm sure on his come up, like what else was he doing other than being in the gym? Like he didn't have money, like he was just in the gym doing like training. So when he gets called for a fight, like he's already there. It's just like you ramp it up. Now it's like he's traveling around the world. He's doing appearances, yachts, all this shit.
Exactly.
He's like, I'm still the champ in my mind. And now I'm just going to train for like 6 to 8 weeks and beat this guy. But it's like, you can't be like a part-time, you can't just parachute in and expect results.
No, you got to go back to the roots of what got you there. And if you're not willing to do that, then maybe it is time to transition. He certainly has set himself up for that. But like in Rocky or whatever, when he was champ, I think he lost or something. He went back to the ghetto, and he went back and trained like he used to, at least a little bit, in the mountains. Yeah, just get some solitude. But I'm slightly skeptical. He might, he'll come back and he'll win a few more fights, I think. But
maybe
will he win?
One, like
I know, right? It's like hang it up before you lose another one. Sometimes I thought his fights were picked strategically for him to win the championships, because I was like, and like when he knocks out Poirier the first time, he barely hit him. It was weird. And I love McGregor. I have him all over all my shit. Like I have my vision boards. I want to sponsor him one day, but he, work with him or something. But and then who was that other when he beat Jose Aldo? That I was like, honestly, is this real? And I was rooting for him, but like he was doing so good, and I really kind of think it was like maybe it's just that magic I was talking about earlier.
He had crazy, like he had crazy like magic through that
Yeah.
film. That's really what it was. Like his momentum was insane, and like he was literally predicting. Like
Yep.
there's footage of him in the locker room before Aldo. One, he like in interviews said like in the first exchange he's getting knocked out, and then in the locker room before the fight, there's footage of him like sliding back and like throwing the left hand, like planning that out.
Yeah, I saw that. That's so cool though. And
So cool.
that's what I like about this thing, and I mean, and that's what I kind of try to suggest to my subscribers or whatever, is doing that visualization and acting it out and preparing yourself for when opportunity strikes. You know, you want to be ready. That's what preparation meets opportunity. And you know, even if you don't know what you want to be yet, visualizing, I would like visualize myself with my hands raised in front of a crowd of screaming fans cheering me on. I'm not sure exactly what it is. I kind of want to become one day some like a motivational speaker. I'm working on it. I enjoy listening to them, and so I get something out of it. So I would like to pass that on if I can get it down real good. What do you see for your future, Patrick?
Man, like it's a good question. I'm interested in a lot of things. Like, I have my day job where I work in real estate.
Oh, nice.
But in terms of like the fight game, I'm a massive fan. I'm inspired by these fighters. MMA, like guys like McGregor, his rise is super inspiring. Guys like Tyson Fury, who came back from, hell to face Wilder and get knocked down, get back up. Like that's one of the most iconic moments
Yeah.
in boxing. And like personally super inspiring for me. Like I'm gonna be sober for almost 2 years now, and like drawing from Tyson's like story was like very like motivating for me.
Oh
So it's
yeah.
like fighters and like these people in the fight game like give me so much that like that was kind of the reason why I started the podcast, is I want to try to like give back to fighting in a way where I'm getting people's stories out there that you might not always hear from. So that's why I did like a lot of local guys in Brooklyn starting out, and like of course trying to work my way up now, and really like get these guys' personalities like out there, and maybe have them connect with fans more. So I'd love like to even be help manage some of these guys, like guide their careers. Like a lot of these dudes, like they need help, like they need help with sponsorships. They need help with people guiding their careers. Because it's a slimy business. There's a lot of people looking to take advantage of people in this game. And, I would love to be like one of the good guys.
Yeah. Well, that's inspiring. I mean, so you want to like transition to doing fighting full time, or you want to probably maybe do both, kind of let the real estate help facilitate you helping the fighters?
Yeah. I think that's kind of my mindset as for now, is like I definitely don't want to like quit on anything. Like I have a few kind of like side hustles going, and just kind of take it a day at a time and just try to like do as best I can with the podcast, and then cultivating like these relationships with fighters and trainers, and trying to help out some of these guys as well is like really interesting. I interviewed Mark. His name is Markel Martin. He's Francis Ngannou's agent over at CAA,
Nice.
and he was like a super motivating guy to talk to, because like he just grinds so hard for Francis, and like Francis is a huge star right now, but like on his come up, came from like he was homeless in France, like got into MMA real late. Like in Africa, he was like in the sand mines, like before he went over to France. Like he has literally like a movie story. So like Markel is talking about how motivating it is to be around Francis, and like he's like, man, some days I'm tired and like trying to get deals done for Francis outside of the cage, and I'm like, man, like I can't be like feeling sorry for myself for a second. Like, dude literally was in sand mines in Africa, like digging all day, fucking moved to France, homeless. Like now he's a heavyweight champ. It's just like an example of like there's nothing like the fight game to me in terms of like the human spirit. Like you see it on display in the ring through like wars that we get to watch as fans. Like guys push the body to like limits that no other sport can do.
Yeah.
And like what's more inspiring than that? You know, these guys like Teddy Atlas always kind of says, and I'm probably gonna botch like the words here, but it's like he says like the night of the fight it's like a way for these guys to make everything fair, like for one night. Like they go through all this bullshit in their lives, but like that one night is like to make everything right, like for and like
yeah, I mean they dedicate their whole life, or you know, a dead portion of their life for these fights, which how many of us dedicate our whole life to doing human resources or payroll or selling houses for that matter. You know, if you win as hard as, you know, Francis and Ngannou win at training, then, you know, you couldn't fail at selling houses. Or some of these fighters that are just exemplary examples of dedication and hard work, you know. That's
and even with yourself, like your story on our podcast, on like my podcast, like you literally were with the tailor, right? Like learning that it's just like by any means necessary, right? Like just having that mindset, being like, I just don't like, I'm gonna do anything. Like it doesn't matter. Like I'm just gonna grind and make this happen. And like that's like the fighter mentality, which is like, you know, it's just like it's motivating. It's sick.
That's why I like doing these. I want to share that motivation, and it was shared with me through, you know, Think and Grow Rich. I did listen to these tapes, Napoleon Hill talking about these businessmen that became successful in the early 1900s by just practicing these principles that are pretty. They're kind of they're out there, you know, like go the extra mile, or you know, like it's out there, but you got to practice it and really live there. A lot of these principles and working together, thinking like one thing. Do you know who Grant Cardone is?
Yeah, I've seen his stuff.
Because he's like real estate. I figured you might be a little into it.
I'm more like on the commercial real estate side, which is like a lot of what he does, honestly, too. He's definitely like a character, though. I mean, he gets views.
He's a trip. He's a trip. I was super into him until one day he said that he recommends renting and not buying. And I was like, I don't feel like he's giving his people the best advice. Yeah. I was turned because he owns a lot of commercial rental properties, and I was just like, that was such a turnoff. What about Gary Vee? Do you know him?
Yeah, I like Gary Vee too. Like he's he's a guy that I honestly at times like almost was annoyed at first. I was like, dude, like I might need to unfollow you. Like you're posting so much. But then at the same time, then I think about it with like my podcast and like the Instagram for that. And I'm like, he's right. Like it's a content game, you know, like, and you can't be like worried about what people think, or like you just got to go for it and do it. So like all of his messages like make a ton of sense to me. Like,
yeah, they do. But for me, after a while, I was just like, okay, I got it. Follow you around with a video camera. But he was quite inspirational to me. I would credit him with getting me over my fear of being on camera, because he was like, you don't have to act like you're somebody else. Just document who you are, and you'll get better as time goes on. And
yeah,
it'll be documented. He also wrote some really good books, and one of them was he's really, well, jab jab, give jab something. It's just like give ask. You want to just give more than you're asking. People are always quick to ask before they give. And you know, and when it comes to the Daily V, his content, I'm not watching it anymore, but I was thinking if there was a fighter version of Gary V who had cameras kind of following him around and telling him his story, that fighter would probably gain more notoriety, you know?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, for however, like, these guys just gotta, and I I don't mean to be like acting like I have the golden ticket for these fighters to become superstars, but just from a promotional standpoint, like they really, some of these guys, like I want them to put themselves out there more,
Promote
like,
themselves.
yeah, promote themselves. Like,
Yeah.
you don't always need a promoter to be like on the mic for you, you know, like, which I think a lot of guys are taking advantage of social media now and interacting more with the fans. Like, I know a lot of MMA guys are, and some boxers are doing it. But the more the better, like the more people can connect with the fighter and get to know them, because they're just people too, you know, like they're going through shit, like they're training, like they have doubts of them about themselves, like getting in the ring, and like, you know, it's just all like good stuff to connect with.
That's a great thing about podcasts. They're everywhere. Everybody seems to have one, but that shouldn't discourage anyone from starting their own, because time will tell. You know, the cream rises to the top, and you can make some people will break through straight to the top. Some of us might take a little bit longer. I'm fine with being on that long haul journey for this, because I do it because I love it, and I would love that you came on here. I appreciate you coming on here. I did want to say 3 really good podcasters that are like sober. You mentioned that you're sober for 2 years, that I really like are Theo Vaughn, Tim Dillon. Yeah, Tim Dillon. You might not know. Do you know him?
I've seen him on, him and Theo like go back and forth. They're both hilarious.
Exactly. And then Bridget Fedesi. Those are, well, we don't sponsor Theo. Would like to. He's awesome.
He's so funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
Him.
And so anyways, I they're 3 of my favorite podcasts as well. So that's just throwing that out there.
I appreciate it. What was the last one? You said Bridget?
Bridget Fedesi. It's Dumpster Fire is the it's a YouTube channel, and it's kind of political, but she's really funny. I like her, and we sponsor that show. So
nice. I'll check it out.
Thank you for coming on. We've come up to our time. What was your favorite part of this podcast?
Man, you know, before the podcast, I actually loved seeing you jump on the trampoline. Gotta say that. Like, I'm always thinking of like how to pick my energy up beforehand, and now I'm thinking like, man, I think I start knocking out some jumping jacks or push-ups or something. But
yeah, that's Tony Robbins. I got that from Anthony, the motivational speaker. He does that before he goes out and pumps up the crowd. So you can use that. But again, thank you. You're welcome. Shout out to Michael Malice. And we'll see you next time. Peace.
Yeah, I appreciate it.